Welcome back, everyone, to the Hot Mix, an InstroTek podcast. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Maurice.
And today, part 2 of our lab setup.
Yes, we continue on with the parts of the lab now that we're getting into after equipment delivery, right?
Oh, I love this part.
I'm glad you love it.
Love this part.
I love when you're passionate about stuff. Now we're going to be looking at, okay, my equipment got delivered. I checked it. Remember, that was really important.
Yeah.
Make sure you inspect your equipment when it arrives, not 3 weeks later. And then, you know what? Okay, so I got all these boxes. I got a room.
Yeah.
I got some furniture in here. I got all consumables. What do I do next? I sure you start unboxing.
Yeah.
Take everything apart, but you know, what are some of the considerations that come after that step?
Well, through the whole process, we'll have already talked about, you know, where you're going to put certain things, right? Because we knew the footprint early on. We discussed the schematic of the lab. Typically, that's how it goes. And
Schematic, that's a good word. I like that word. I like the way it sounds.
There's a couple episodes in a row using SAT words. I feel like we'll just keep that rolling.
Yeah. That was good. That was one of yours. I like it.
Yeah, so I think that is important. You get that schematic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to spell schematic. Yeah, I got it. I can do it. I'm not going to do it live on air, but I can do it.
You don't want to get it wrong.
No, I don't. I probably would.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know what a schematic is, and that's one thing that we do to help. So we know, obviously, if you're getting an NCAT in, I think this is a good example to start with. Because the NCAT, obviously, you're going to need to have it at a certain voltage, which we would have already discussed the requirements.
Just real quick, an NCAT is basically a burn-off oven or an ignition oven.
Yeah, asphalt content.
That lets you know the asphalt content of whatever product you put in there, whatever asphalt mixture you put in there.
Right.
It heats up to a certain temperature and then burns off the asphalt. All you're left was the aggregate.
Yeah.
And then the difference in weight basically lets you know how much asphalt content you had on that asphalt mixture.
Nicely done.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I dropped schematics.
Surprise myself sometimes.
Yeah, well, that was good. That was good. See, I think one of the things that we need to focus on with certain types of ovens is ventilation.
Yes, very important. We get sometimes. It creates a challenge, right? Sorry, I was trying to get the words right. Yeah, it creates a challenge though, because there's been so many times we delivered these furnaces and ovens and the ventilation hasn't been talked about, or how you're going to get the air through there, and that's a very good point. But you've had personal experiences trying to get these done right. Yeah,
so obviously the lab is going to have the way that it's built is going to determine where you're going to want this exhaust. Some you could go right out the side of the building. Some you're going to have to go up through the roof and out the roof. But the main thing here is just to make sure that you have the correct rated piping and insulation, so that you're talking about high temps here,
right?
And hot air getting blown out of this, so it's very important. But you know, a lot of this stuff is covered. We just like to mention it on the show so that you know that we got your back.
Yeah,
is the main thing.
That we know how to do this. We've installed a NCAT furnace or two.
Yeah,
and
or 25 or 30.
Yeah, and we've seen all the experiences. So if you come to us, we're just gonna be I've seen this before. This is how we fix it, and that's really good information to have with the person you're buying the equipment from.
Yeah, and when you're talking about setting different things up in your lab, you're going to want them to be very efficient. You're going to want things to be in the right place. If you're doing testing with water, you're going to want to make sure you have a water source close, right? If you're doing rice testing, you want to have a water source close so you can fill your pot. You know, just everything needs to be efficient and fluid throughout the lab. So that's pretty much how we start. Where are you going to want to be? Where are your amenities in the lab? And then we'll build the equipment out around that.
Right. Yeah, and then that's very important because you know, a slow lab doesn't produce as much.
Correct.
So obviously being efficient and being able to push product through and testing through is key for profitability of the asphalt lab.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
I like it.
So we kind of talked about some of the specialty equipment. Let's talk a little bit about what do I need to do to keep my equipment running properly throughout, like a verification, from the verification standpoint. You know, you want to do your own checks on the equipment, especially you got a big job. Let's say you just, you got this equipment, you spent all this money on it, now you landed that big contract, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that equipment is top notch, ready to start testing, and maybe you want to verify it.
Yeah, so obviously if the lab is up and running and everything's set up, we will have come in and done the calibrations, the initial calibrations. Right. When you get into the actual season and you need to check and make sure that everything is still in line, you'll want things like a vacuum tour gauge so that you can check the vacuum pressure on your pumps and on your pycnometers for your
rice pot.
Rice pot, exactly. You're going to want potentially, and some states require calibration blocks for your scales to make sure that you can verify those. Even for your NCAT, if you want to verify your NCAT scale. There's a lot of little things. If it is a mixed design lab, you're going to want to be able to put a load ring or the verification blocks on your gyratory to make sure everything is tightened up. And that's just the little steps that you can do to keep in-house to create the peace of mind and know that you're within spec before you start your testing.
And just keep in mind, we're talking from a 30,000 foot view. We know there's probably every state has a different maybe verifications they have to do, different rules they have to follow by the state specification or even by AASHTO, by AASHTO resource. So we completely understand that. So this is just kind of giving you an idea of what you may have to deal with. So you kind of know, hey, I do have to consider some verification equipment. They kind of told me that. Let's look at my specific situation and let me find out what that is. So
and there's nothing wrong with us giving ourselves a little street cred.
No, absolutely not. We know what we're talking about. So verification equipment, really important. Another consideration that you might not have thought of when you get in there. So now we got our verification equipment, in there. Let's talk a little bit about the type of personnel you're going to need to get these tests done.
Yeah, there's certainly levels to technicians and certifications. So obviously, if you're just doing general and you have a level 1 technician that's going to be just running your lab and doing the kind of traditional general lab testing, that's perfectly fine. If you're moving into the more of the mixed design side, you're going to want to make sure that you have a level 2 or anybody that's certified to do mixed designs, right? So a lot of times it's the hardest part about setting up a lab sometimes is the personnel. Making sure you have enough people, making sure you have the right people to run efficiently and do everything that you're looking to do, especially if you're bidding state jobs.
And you might need a professional engineer, or you are the professional engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're going to need to fill these positions out in order for you to get your lab working and running properly with the right level technician, which is, again, each situation is going to call for a different type of personnel, but something to consider to know that, hey, who am I going to have working in the lab, right? And some labs do great and get great people. I know there's great people coming into the industry, and we absolutely love that they're part of that those levels of technicians that you need. So
absolutely.
Going from the personnel and what you're going to need there, we want to kind of know what are the #1 challenges you faced when you're going through the whole lab.
Yeah, I think kind of just pivoting off the personnel, people come and people go in this industry, right? And if you have personnel changes in the middle of this and you've had somebody that's set up this entire process and then you have somebody new coming in to replace it and take it and go from there, that can be a big challenge.
God, man, you're preaching now.
Oh,
you're up there. Because that is the #1 thing that we have seen that can really throw a wrench into the whole process, right? You got someone assigned to do this whole thing for you, and in the middle of it, they decide, hey, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Someone else comes in, and then that person has their own take on everything, and all the work you've done up till then kind of needs to be reworked. Not that it's impossible, we can absolutely do it, but just make sure you're gonna add more time to the entire project. Why? Because they come in with their own ideas of the equipment they use or the equipment they liked. Maybe they had a really good experience with this manufacturer over this manufacturer. Now we have to switch it out. So it does really matter that the person that is the project leader is kind of there through the whole process and works with us from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think the one good thing that we can count on though is that we'll be there with you the whole time. That will be the one constant.
That is the one constant that you can count on is Anthony will definitely, or anybody really here,
anybody
can just stay with you. And if you do need those changes, no problem, we can do them.
We'll make it happen.
Just know that it can maybe add a little more time to the project, and if it's time sensitive, time critical, obviously you want to take that in consideration. So
absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was budgets. What happens when a budget kind of gets a little bit bigger and how we can help there?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about budgets in general, I mean, obviously you've allotted amount of money for a certain type of equipment. So getting us to help fit in those gaps and fill in those gaps of equipment that you're looking for and knowing how we can meet those needs with the brands and the things that we have, access to is one of the ways that we can get you the most ROI when it comes to your budget.
And most value. I think people are just looking for the value in the budget, and that's something we actually consider and probably discuss at an earlier stage of hey, what is your budget for this lab? And if we're getting close to that budget, kind of reassess what we have to make sure that you're getting the best value equipment, the best value for the lab, and it's within your budget.
Well, budgets seem to change. I've noticed when building that labs, because what you realize very late sometimes in the process is not everything that you thought you needed was ordered, and based on those consumables that I was talking about. And when personnel changes come in and go, some people like a certain type of this and a certain type of that, and now you have to kind of pivot.
No, that is an excellent point, because you realize, hey, maybe I should have put 20% in above my budget, or 10% above my budget, because you are going to face challenges that you didn't think you're going to need. You're going to need this or that in equipment or personnel, whatever it is. So it's good always to kind of have a little bit of a window there, so you can add maybe that piece of equipment you didn't think you were going to need, or that you want to bump up to a higher level piece of equipment. So, all right, we're getting here towards the end.
Let's do it.
That's why it was a two-parter.
It was a two-parter.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of information sharing we're doing here, or knowledge drop.
Content takes time.
It does.
Two parts.
It does, and we were very well prepared for this one. I think we've hit most of the steps here, but I think we're finally at one of the end steps, right? Accreditation of the lab, calibration of the lab, and then any licensing or permitting. And we're not talking about the building and you know, all that stuff we don't get into. You know, we're not real estate people, but we are talking about, you know, if you want to have nuclear gauges, you're going to need licensing. There's certain things you're going to need. If you haven't have any nuclear equipment in there, which there isn't much besides the nuclear gauge nowadays, but there were back in the day. So you're going to need them. So let's talk a little bit about getting the lab calibrated after everything's in and everything's set up.
Yeah. So once you get once again, all a part of the process that will be discussed throughout, right? This isn't something at the end that we just throw on. You're like, oh, no, time for calibration. You know, we are talking about this in the steps. So the one thing you'll want to
part of that budget too, right?
It's part of the budget. Absolutely. It's all kind of worked into the initial quote.
Correct. Yeah.
So the one thing you'll want to do is timeline. When are we going to start testing? When are we going to start paving? When is the plant going to start running?
Right.
And so what we'll do is we'll base all of that around when our technicians can make it out. And so one thing that we do provide is we are ISO 17025 certified, so that
A2LA.
A2LA. Yes. And if you're trying to get your AASHTO resource accreditation and all those things, we can provide that service for you. But the timeline is important. And getting all the equipment set up that we've already done at this point is important. So I feel like this is the last step into kind of that last check on the lab.
It's the last step in the process, but we start talking about it probably when you start talking about that, getting that equipment and everything you need calibrated, right? We have some wonderful people here that we'll work with. It's not us going out there. It's people that are a lot better with a calibration tool than we are. But we start talking about way on before and aligning everything up so everything kind of comes together at the very end, and then boom, you're ready to go. And then obviously from that, after your lab is set up, we can do in-house calibrations where you send us equipment, or our field guys, if you're within a certain radius of our offices, which we have 6 across the country, they can come out to you and calibrate that lab again. Since they know it, they help you install it, they help you calibrate everything, and you'll get all the calibration certificates. Make sure you're staying up to date with all your cal certs and everything you need to keep that lab real healthy, let's just say, right?
The best thing about working with HMA and InstroTek and just our team is it doesn't end there. That's where it begins as far as the customer service.
Oh, absolutely. No, 100%.
And taking care of, you know, we are an after-the-sale company, and we like to make sure that everybody knows that, right? Especially when you're spending 100%. That kind of money. We're talking about budgets. We're talking about big expenditure here.
No, by this time, we're friends. Yeah. By this time, the people that we have helped set up labs, now we consider you friends because we have talked so much. Yeah. We have gone through some ups and downs with you. We've made some changes. Yeah. You know, we faced your challenges from this perspective, the perspective we're talking about, and yeah, so we have a relationship that we want to keep going and build as you now start producing, the lab starts producing, so it's excellent. And then finally, the last thing would be, if you are considering getting a lab with nuclear gauges, you do need to consider getting the lab licensed for nuclear gauges. You'll need an RSO, again, going back to that personnel part of it. So there are parts of that. But luckily, InstroTek is not only great with asphalt products, but we have a whole nuclear side to the company. We are one of the fastest growing brands in nuclear gauges. We can cover anything you need: training, leak testing, calibration, help setting up your license in every state, not just in the ones we're at. So we have a ton of knowledge that we can help you with, and we can share if that's going to be part of your lab. If it's not, great. Probably, you don't need nuclear gauges, but if it is, then you can count on us to help you with that as well.
Absolutely. So, I love it. Well, that concludes the two-parter.
Yeah.
And we
my first time, I got through it okay, I think. How did we do?
Yeah, you did really good, man.
Yeah.
You ended with a bang there on the nuclear gauges.
My cold didn't get in the way.
No,
This Dayquil, sorry, did help. So
the thing about the cold that you have is it doesn't sound very catchy.
No, hopefully not. Yeah. For your sake, at least.
Thank you all so much for joining us. As always, we really appreciate the support. If you have any comments, things to add, things that we can add into what we bring to the table, we always appreciate the feedback. So appreciate you joining us, and just remember one thing, keep it hot.
Keep it real.
Keep it real hot. And here are some key takeaways from the video. Number 1, lab amenities. Where are our sinks located? Where are we going to ventilate our end cap? Do we have the space that we need allotted for each piece of equipment that we've received? Number 2, verification of equipment. Once everything is in its place, we want to make sure that we utilize the tools that were provided with the equipment to verify. Number 3, personnel. Make sure that we have all the technician certifications in place so that we can do mix designs as well as the general asphalt lab tests. Number 4, calibrating your lab. This is the last step. We'll mobilize our field service team to help you through this process. Number 5, nuclear gauges. If you're looking to add nuclear gauges to your testing, please give us a call and we can walk you through all the parameters for acquiring your nuclear license and how to purchase them.